Arthur Conan Doyle was a very good writer, a very successful and prolific author, even if he had never written a single word about Baker Street. But what makes him great are his Sherlock Holmes stories. As benign as it seems to us, the thought already irritated Sir Arthur since 1890s, when he was made to understand that this character, as an entity, is larger than even he is. He tried to cut ties with Holmes, pretty unceremoniously, early on, when he thought he was able to kill the guy. But very soon reality crept in the form of angry mob that demanded urgent resurrection. So, after some fine-tuning and course correction, Conan Doyle settled with new norms and was able to combine work and passion in a way that sometimes maybe felt indistinguishable for himself. The end result is God knows how many editions on all kinds of languages and hundreds of adaptations spent over the course of more than a century. If you are watching this video from an English-speaking country, or any country that wasn't part of Soviet Union, you can have a variety of opinions on what Sherlock Holmes actually looks like. Maybe it's based on Conan Doyle's books, and the description he gave of his character's appearance resonated with your imagination. So, from that point on, your perception of great detective was based on those memories. Or you went to a theater, and there was an impressive Sherlock Holmes play that night. Maybe you watched a TV series or a movie, old or one of the more recent ones, and that was it, a gold standard that every director who dares to come up with a new version of Conan Doyle's work has to match. Or, at the very least, not screw up to the point of being unwatchable. If, however, you are a native Russian speaker, or say 30 years old, then chances are there is one specific adaptation that you were indoctrinated to from a very young age, a Soviet one. And even if, for whatever reason, it's not your favorite, it's the one that you compare every other to. An iconic series of 5 movies directed by Igor Maslennikov and produced by Film from 1979 until 1986. You know, in Soviet Union, due to information filtering, sometimes people just didn't know better. There is a famous joke by a Soviet writer and, in today's language, stand-up comedian Mikhail Zhvanetsky, who summarized that Soviet shoes were amazing until you experienced other shoes. Basically, if you only have so many options, then you can't really make a comprehensive judgment of the quality of a product. But while it was true for shoes and some other industries, it was not the case with Soviet cinema. It actually could be favorably compared to the great work of its foreign counterparts. Unfortunately, because of the language and culture barrier, some of the best examples of it are scarcely known outside of the former Soviet republics, and one of these examples is Igor Maslennikov's film series. Although it gained some traction and, for example, was officially praised by UK authorities for spreading British culture and, being pretty bloody good, it's still known by comparatively small, niche audience, which is a shame, since a lot of people could have enjoyed it, but don't even know of its existence. As some sort of a disclaimer, I will just say that you are not required to become a positive to appreciate Soviet cinema, and this movie specifically. Even if this thought seems self-evident for some of you, for others, I can make a good comparison. Space exploration. Whereas it was a tense competition between two major powers, the end result is, it contributed a lot to mankind in general, resulting in a bunch of technological breakthroughs. With the end of such competition, on the contrary, led to a decades-long stagnation, relatively speaking of course. And while I'm not exactly comparing sending a man to space or moon landing to producing a movie, the point is that art also is our common heritage, no matter where we are from. So, from the excessively bombastic rant, let's downscale to the subject matter. 5 movies that I'll make 5 videos about, without spoilers, but with certain details that I hope you might find interesting and that will provide some additional knowledge helpful for the context. I will add a link to the movies themselves in the description to this video. For a bummer, it's not up to English at this moment. Good news, however, there is a version with pretty decent embedded English subtitles, so here you go. The first Sherlock Holmes movie was filmed in 1979, entitled Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And though I doubt that this title really strikes you with creativity, there was a deliberate emphasis made on the importance of Dr. Watson for the whole thing. By the way, it just so happened that, in Russia, Watson is pronounced differently from what some heretics would say his original name, Watson, and there is nothing to do about it. He'll forever be known here as Watson, while other people, real or fictional, with the exact same name, pronounced correctly, Watson. So, yeah. Anyway, Watson or not, but he was viewed as an equally important character from the get-go. Casting for the leading roles was somewhat challenging, not for the lack of good choices, but you always want to pick the perfect match. Vasily Ivanov, who became Sherlock, had a reputation of an extremely talented but a difficult actor to work with. Rina Zeleная, Mrs. Hudson in the series, was 77 at the time of filming of the first movie, and there were concerns about her age, while Vitaly Solomin, Dr. Watson, was thought to have too much of a Slavic appearance for an Englishman. In his case, it all resulted when the director saw his old photo from an actor's resume with fake mustache. Not only he looked British, he looked like a distant relative of Conan Doyle himself. It also helped that we quickly found great chemistry with Livanov on the screen tests, and afterwards became very good friends until Solomin's death in 2002. Thus, the main cast assembled. Regarding filming locations, movie crew obviously wasn't allowed to go directly to the United Kingdom. So, the best they got was to pick a location in USSR, plus sometimes the footage from Soviet television Foreign Reporter. It's hard for me as a Russian to tell, did the scenery eventually resemble Meryl Britain? But for Soviet audience, it was sort of foreign-looking, therefore good enough. To achieve that, and by the way, it was true for basically any Soviet movie where the plot took place in Western Europe, filming was usually conducted in Soviet Union's Western republics. In this case, it was Baltic region, and its major cities like Tallinn and Riga that had an abundance of old European architecture. For a quick historical context, both cities became part of Russian Empire some 7 centuries after Yaroslav the Wise, in the early 1700s, after then Tsardom of Russia defeated Swedish Empire in the Great Northern War. Another Sherlock Holmes filming location was St. Petersburg, Leningrad back then, that was built during the same period by Peter the Great and had a lot of European influence in its formation and style. So, the first movie, the pentalogy, is divided into 2 parts. First part is called Acquaintance and is based on Conan Doyle's short story The Adventure of the Speckled Band and his novel A Study in Scarlet, which is actually the first book where we meet a dynamic detective duo. While the second part of the movie is called Blood Inscription, and that's where A Study in Scarlet adventure ends. In Acquaintance, we see how Holmes and Watson got to know each other, which was quite a fun experience, and also tackle their first shared case, a horrible death of a young woman who was soon due to get married, but something happened. The role of this unfortunate bride and her twin sister incidentally was portrayed by Solomin's wife, Maria. Second episode, Bloody Inscription, introduced Inspector Lestrade, actor Boleslav Brundukov, who is annoying and somewhat charming at the same time. And the antagonist here is controversial, charismatic, American, and depicted by Nikolai Karachintsev, who kinda developed a habit of playing Americans in Soviet movies. If I'm not mistaken, he did it at least on 4 occasions. Depending on how well this channel does, we might come back to 1 or 2 of these films down the road. Soviet Sherlock in general is more of a classical adaptation, but there were some differences, both regarding the plot or certain peculiar details. For example, it's common knowledge that Holmes had a substance abuse problem. Of course, Soviet movies had none of that, basically whitewashing Sherlock's reputation. There can also be noticed an interesting historical twist. In their first interaction, Holmes guesses that Watson returned from the East. In the book, however, Watson specifically returned from Afghanistan. Afghanistan, remind you, in the 19th century was part of a so-called Great Game between Great Britain and Russian empires. But that of course was not the reason why change in the movie, 100 years later, was made. Literally just 2 months before the premiere of the film on Soviet television, Afghan War started, when Soviet troops entered the country. Therefore, to avoid obvious connotations, word Afghanistan was changed to East and East colonies. Funny how you can actually see the lip sync during 2 dialogues featuring the A word doesn't actually match. Nevertheless, subsequently, even in Soviet times, movie was aired without any censorship. It instantly became so popular and beloved by public that film crew really had no other choice than to continue the saga, in this way resembling Conan Doyle's own situation back in the day. For more interesting facts about Soviet Sherlock movie series, watch my next video, where we will talk about the second film, the mysterious group of criminal masterminds that our heroes were destined to fight against on the fields of medieval Britain and beyond. And that's it for the Acquaintance. Thanks for watching.